Turkey debates what to do about the 4 million dogs on its streets. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff here to welcome you back to another Plain English, episode number 708 to be exact. Here at Plain English, you can upgrade your skills by listening to stories about the world. There is no law, there is no rule that says English learning has to be boring. So my advice to you, if you're bored by English, find something better to read, better to watch, and better to listen to. Well, here at Plain English, our episodes have two parts. In the first part, we tell a story about something going on in the world. And in the second part, we show you how to use a common English expression. On today's story, Turkey has about 4 million dogs living on the street, and a new law aims to round them up and put them in shelters or worse. Learn about the debate raging inside Turkey about what to do, if anything, about the dogs that live on the streets. And in the second half of the episode, I'll show you how to use the English expression, get out of hand. Before we start today's story, I'd just like to remind you that the podcast is just one part of how we can help you upgrade your English skills. At plainenglish.com, you can make faster progress with active learning strategies. You can take quizzes, do activities, listen to the fast version of the audio, watch video workshops, practice what you learn, and even join a live call with JR and me. It's all about helping you build your skills to become a better, more confident English speaker. Sound good? Go to plainenglish.com to start your free 14-day trial today. Now, let's jump into today's story. In Turkey, a lot of dogs live on the street, but that doesn't mean they aren't loved. Many residents play with them, cuddle them, and leave food for them outside. Residents of Istanbul, Ankara, and other cities feel a special connection to the dogs that live in their neighborhoods. Small dog houses are common sights in city parks. For the most part, the dogs are well behaved. Tourists take pictures with them. City governments sterilize dogs and give them vaccinations for rabies, and then return them to where they were found. That way, the street dogs can get the shots and sterilization they need. Abandoned dogs don't have to live in shelters. The population can enjoy the dog's company. Everyone's happy. Well, not everyone. A lot of Turkish residents don't like street dogs. Or, it's more accurate to say, they don't like that dogs live outside on the street. Dogs have been blamed for causing traffic accidents, for attacking people, including children, and for spreading disease. The founder of an activist group said his 9-year-old daughter was running away from 2 dogs when she was hit by a truck. She died weeks later. Others are uncomfortable and afraid when packs of dogs chase their cars and roam the streets. What's more, the current system works better in theory than in practice. Not all dogs are sterilized. Not all towns and cities have the resources to give them vaccinations. Many places don't have any shelters for dogs that are sick or that pose a threat to humans. In many areas, dogs outside don't have a reliable source of food that can make them aggressive. Dogs also figure in the secular religious divide in Turkey. Devout Muslims consider dogs to be unclean, while more secular residents are comfortable living with them. Some say that street dogs hurt Turkey's international reputation. No other developed country has so many stray animals roaming its streets. If Turkey wants to further grow into a rich country, the argument goes, it needs to get its street dogs under control. And now the debate has intensified with a new law. Turkey's ruling Justice and Development Party, the AK, proposed a law that would round up stray dogs, put them into shelters, and put them up for adoption. Under the AK's proposal, any animals not adopted within 30 days of being placed into a shelter would have to be euthanized. That, according to the government's logic, would free up more space in shelters so the system could repeat itself until all dogs were off the street. In a speech before Parliament, the president tried to calm opponents' nerves. If dogs are adopted within 30 days of being placed in a shelter, he coolly said, then there would be no need to go to the next step. Well, people understood what he meant by the next step: euthanasia. And this caused widespread protests, and not just among animal rights activists. Many Turks are genuinely afraid that the new law will result in mass killing of dogs. The shelter system isn't very big, and there isn't a strong culture of formally adopting dogs from shelters. The fear is that most dogs pulled off the street won't find a permanent home and will have to be killed under this proposed law. Few Turks want mass euthanasia of dogs, but most people aren't fully comfortable with the status quo either. A recent survey showed that 80% of Turks think that dogs should be removed from the streets, but only 3% said they should be euthanized. In other words, the majority of people would probably support a gradual transition where street dogs are systematically sterilized and moved into adoptive homes. So why didn't the parliament propose something like that? Well, there is a more cynical interpretation of what's going on, and it has to do with political power. The current president's party, the AK, has ruled Turkey at the national level since 2002. But opposition parties took over control of Turkey's largest cities in the most recent election, and the opposition strongly opposes this law. The national parliament proposed this law, but guess who would have to implement it? Guess who would have to put all these dogs in shelters? Guess who would have to actually put the dogs down if they didn't find homes? You guessed it, it's the local governments the ones controlled by the opposition. And if those local governments refuse to follow the new law, the city officials, the people in the opposition, can face up to 2 years in jail. So it's possible that this law really isn't about dogs at all. It's possible this is just a convenient excuse for the national ruling party to threaten its opponents and bully them into doing things against their values. Turkey's parliament passed the law in late July, albeit with modifications from the original proposal. The ruling party backed off its requirement to euthanize dogs after 30 days, so that's not required under the law. But local governments are still required to collect dogs from the streets and put them in shelters or even euthanize them if they appear aggressive. It's not clear where the local governments will get the money to construct the shelters that are required. The opposition has said it won't enforce laws in cities that it controls. They have labeled it the Massacre law and have pledged to fight it in Turkey's courts. I'm a dog lover. I'm also not an animal rights activist, but, or maybe because of that, I don't think the street is the place for a dog to live. I don't think that's the best life for the dogs or for the people around them. But rounding up dogs in mass and killing the ones that aren't adopted in a short period of time is just cruel. But I'm with the cynics. I don't think this law is about the dogs at all. I think the dogs are just incidental to this whole thing, just collateral damage. This is about raw power and the ruling party threatening and punishing its opponents. Get out of hand is an expression we use when something becomes difficult or impossible to control. It can refer to situations that start out manageable, but then escalate and become overwhelming. We use things are getting out of hand to describe discomfort or nervousness around the situation. We don't use get out of hand for things that are tragic or that are very serious. The most common way to use get out of hand is when a situation escalates beyond your control. You start to get uncomfortable or a little nervous, and it's typically because of things people are doing. So imagine you're at a casual gathering with friends and a friendly debate about the two local sports teams begins. The discussion starts as a light-hearted conversation with some good-natured, competitive comments. But a discussion like that can quickly get out of hand. What would it mean for a discussion about sports teams to get out of hand? Well, maybe some people would get offended. They wouldn't think some of the jokes were funny. Maybe some people would raise their voices. Maybe their comments would start being less friendly, more pointed. Maybe then there would be some pushing and shoving. That's getting out of hand. So when things start to get out of hand, you want to step in, try to control the situation, calm people down. It's not just in social situations. In the United States, people like to think politics is aggressive. If a congressman interrupts a speaker in the House of Representatives, or makes a derogatory comment, or raises his voice, then we would say things are getting out of hand. But that's nothing compared to what sometimes happens elsewhere. Here's one example. In Turkey recently, a brawl broke out in parliament. There was punching and blood splattered on the white background of the speaker's podium. Now that's really out of hand. I don't mean to minimize the points that were being debated, but pushing, shoving, punching, maybe a little blood, this is out of hand. It's hard to control. But again, nobody got killed. It's not a war, so we can use out of hand in this case. Things can sometimes get out of hand with kids. That won't come as a surprise to the parents out there. Some kids are always well behaved. They're in control of their actions. They don't let situations get out of hand. But a lot of times with kids, especially groups of kids, the situation can go from calm to chaotic pretty quickly. Things can get out of hand if you're not careful. Imagine you're hosting a birthday party for a group of energetic 6-year-olds, and it's at a local park. At first, everything's going smoothly. They're playing games, eating cake, having fun. But then some wander off to play a game in the fields nearby. And soon you see some kids getting near the street. You turn your head and you see some other kids trying to catch a frog in the pond, and their clothes are a mess. It's hard to keep track of everyone. Things are getting out of hand. Now, it's not really dangerous. It's not bad, but things are getting out of hand. It's the adult's job now to step in, get people under control, count everyone, make sure nobody's missing, all that stuff. When things get out of hand, you have to step in and bring the situation back under control. Another way things can get out of hand is when a project or task becomes overwhelming. Imagine you've taken on the responsibility of organizing a charity event. When you began, everything seemed straightforward. You just needed to secure a venue, arrange catering, and invite guests. Sounds easy, right? But as the date crept closer, more and more tasks kept popping up. Suddenly, you were dealing with last-minute changes, unexpected costs, and volunteers who weren't showing up when they were needed. The project got out of hand. It was hard for you to control. Now, just a reminder as we wrap up. When a situation is getting out of hand, it's not a crisis. These are situations where you're starting to lose control. It's not looking good, but it's not a crisis. Some pushing and shoving, that's getting out of hand. Maybe a punch thrown, that's out of hand. Kids running around where they shouldn't be going, clothes covered in mud, that's out of hand. We're not talking about very serious situations. We're not talking about wars, kidnapping, death, tragedies, things like that. Now, if something really bad happens, if someone winds up in the hospital, say, or if a house burns down, you cannot, I repeat, you cannot say things got out of hand. Because get out of hand is what we use when things are a little bit out of control. If someone has to go to the hospital after a fight, and if you say, things got a little out of hand, then what you would be doing is you'd be minimizing the seriousness of the situation. And you don't want to do that. So make sure to use this only for situations that are not too serious. All right, that will officially do it for us at Plain English Today. This was episode number 708. So JR has uploaded the transcripts and all the resources associated with the story and the expression to plainenglish.com/708. Check that out. This month, we're going to do some episodes about fashion, and the first fashion episode is coming up on Thursday. We're going to be asking, why is it so hard for women to find an outfit that fits well? See you back here for that one on Thursday. Listen up if you speak Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, German, French, Italian, Japanese, Polish, or Turkish. One of the most frustrating things about listening and reading in a second language is being confused by unfamiliar words or phrases. When you listen to plain English, or when you read the transcript, you probably encounter some words you don't know. When that happens, you have a few options. You can stop the audio, go look up the definition, then return to the episode, find your place, and press play again, but that's exhausting. Or you can just skip it and be confused. That's no fun either. But what if you could see the translation of the word into your language instantly without having to stop the audio, without having to look anything up? Well, you can at plainenglish.com. For each episode, we translate about 100 words and phrases from English to 9 languages: Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, German, French, Italian, Japanese, Polish, and Turkish. And we highlight those words in blue. All you have to do is hover your mouse over the highlighted word, and you'll see the translation instantly. It works great on mobile too. It really makes listening a lot more satisfying, and it's a great way to expand your vocabulary in English. The best way to see these translations is to sign up for a free 14-day trial at plainenglish.com. During your trial, you can read as many transcripts as you like, all with the translations into your language. So sign up for your free trial today at plainenglish.com.